Hi, welcome back to Repairing Lawnmowers for Profit. Wasn't going to do a video, but I'm out here just winterising my lawnmower, if you like, and just putting it away for the winter, cleaning things up. I've got the camera in the garage, so I should have turned it on sooner, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing just to put my lawnmower away for winter. So, as you can probably see here, I'll leave this open so I don't forget to turn it back on, look. As you can probably see here, under my poppy, under the way, I've actually properly drained the oil out here. Under the side of here, there's actually a plug under here that comes out so you can drain the oil out, and I tend to do this once a year, and I've had questions over the last sort of 12 years I've done the channel of why don't you just take the plug out of the bottom. Well, the reason I don't on a lot of these mowers is I've got to lift it up onto something. I've also got this oil extractor in here which I can use, but the other reason is to get to that I've got to take off this cover here for the actual pulley under here, so you've got that off. Often the two screws are rusted on the back, and you've got to take the bolt off the front. Not sure what you can see up there. It's just a bit of a faff, and by the time I've done all that, and of course take the blade off, by the time I've done all that, I could have just got an oil extractor, even just a cheap oil extractor, and drained it out. But at the end of the winter, when I'm not going to use this mower again, I like to just take it out from the bottom. So what I use to take this out is, if you just get your spanner like this, that's actually the perfect size for removing this sump plug here. You can see here this fits on here perfectly, so you don't need any special tool. You can just use this, which is great. So obviously what I've been doing is I've just left this to run in the garden for sort of 5-10 minutes, warmed everything up, and the reason I'm doing this is I want to get the oil out of it. I'm going to take this at the beginning of the thriller video. It is Halloween, isn't it? Happy Halloween, everybody. The reason is I want to be able to tip this up, so I want all the oil out of it. I'm going to take the tank off. I've got the blade off. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take all the grass off the underside, which I've done most of with a pressure washer outside. I'm just going to wire brush it off. I'm going to give it a paint, as I always advise people to do. This lawnmower's probably about 20-year-old, maybe even a little bit older, and I paint it every year, and so far I've got no holes in the deck, and I'm sure you've seen on previous videos it runs really well as well. So get all the oil out of here, nice and warm. Still leave that to run out, probably have a nice cup of tea first. I'm going to take the tank off here. I'm going to keep the fuel in, it should be okay over winter. Never like to drain it out. Let me know what you think in the comments section, whether you should drain the fuel out. What's the best way to stop the inside of these tanks rusting? And these are getting quite hard to get hold of, by the way. So if you see a couple of these on eBay for $5 or $10 each, grab yourself one. So while the oil's out, the fuel's out, I can clean the underside with a wire brush. I'm going to paint it. I'm going to sharpen up the blade, put this back on, clean out this actual belt guard here, put it all back together, leave myself a note on here saying it needs some oiling before next spring. I advise you do the same thing as well. Another thing people like to do is, if you take out the plug, you can push like a straw in the end, or some people use a screwdriver, you can pull on the starter cord, you'll actually feel the piston come up to top dead centre, and if it's at top dead centre, obviously the ball's not exposed inside, and people say it's less likely to rust. So one thing I like to do is leave the engine at top dead centre as well. So as I've said, I don't really make many videos anymore, but while I was out here I just wanted to film it because over the last few days someone sort of taught me about shorts. I'm a bit out of touch with all the new techniques on YouTube, but I saw these YouTube shorts, so I put some on. I got loads and loads of views for some reason. I don't know if that's good or whatever, but I kind of got back to watching a few of my old videos, especially the very early ones, which were, you know, probably 10, 11, 12 years ago now. And I'm watching these videos, I'm thinking, well, some of these are pretty good actually. I've never really realised how much detail I went into with something. So while I was out here, as I say, I got the camera out, I'm just putting this away for winter. Probably not much else you can do. One thing I want to say is that with the ridiculous situation we've got in this country with energy bills, things like that, this is the best time to go around Facebook Marketplace, eBay, local recycle centres, even putting something in your post office window. You could get 30, 40, 50 of these mowers, store them up, service them and sell them all in spring. You make yourself thousands and thousands of pounds. So if you're looking for something to do that just can enable you just from learning a couple of little skills and cleaning something up and listing it properly just to earn yourself some extra income, this is still a very, very viable option. If I was still looking to make myself an extra income in other ways, I'd be out there now in the mowmobile picking up all these extra mowers, and believe me, I would have a garage full, as I'm sure you've seen in the past I've done. For now, I'm spending a lot of time writing websites. I'm finding some success with that. I've really missed filming a video, so here we are out in the garage. Is that a terrible cup of tea? I don't know. I like it like that. Let me know you like your tea. This is still dripping out a little bit. It's been about 20 minutes, but I just wanted to address some comments I get. I get loads of great comments. 99% of people who comment are great. Saying, oh, he's packed in because he's got AstroTurf grass. Well, no, I haven't got AstroTurf grass. Just wanted to clear that up. I don't have AstroTurf grass. I'll probably never ever have AstroTurf grass. It would be no fun at all, would it? So I'm going to put this sump plug back in here, and I'm going to show you how to take this carb off for winter. So you can see here, this is just a plug that's underneath. I don't think all the mowers have these on, the newer ones. I don't think do the cheaper ones. I'll be honest, for a long time, until someone kept leaving me comments saying, why don't you just remove the sump plug? I didn't realise they were on either. Of course, I mentioned, if you're going to do this, leave the mower running for 5-10 minutes, get the oil nice and warm, and then it'll come out a lot easier. You'll get a lot more of this oil coming out. So I've left that probably around 20 minutes. So I'm just going to put this back in under here. As I say, I only do this at the end of the year as well. It's just quicker and easier, and without having to take everything off the top, to just use the extractor. And if you're trying to repair these for profit as well, it's a lot easier and quicker to get these done. And you're still going to get a good oil change. If you get the engine running and you get everything sucked out kind of from the top, you're still going to do the job. So let's just tighten this back up. Right, so that's back in there. I'm going to get this oil here. I'm going to drain it down into this funnel. This is just going to go into my extractor, and I can take this to the tip next time I go. And actually, from the top, that oil, when you measured it on the dipstick, looked really nice and clean. Because I only did it at the beginning of the year. Just, you know, I always just change it over and it takes a few minutes. But I must admit, I was surprised how dirty that looked when it came out. So one thing I always mention on the videos, do the right thing with the oil. Take it to the recycle centre as well. So next job, nice and easy. Just going to go outside. I'm going to take all this off with this wire brush here. This is really important, because if this gets full of grass, the belt that's pulling round at the back on the pulley, it can get this grass underneath it, can pull the belt off. If it pulls the belt off, it's 1000% guaranteed that this blade's going to chop into a million pieces. At the end of each season of using these, make sure you take these off. It only takes a few minutes. And one little tip I want to give you as well is that make sure you replace the screws when you do this. If you get the screws here, you can see here, they round off really easy, they rust, and it's really difficult because they're placed on the underside of here. When you do this, just put a couple of new screws in, make sure the screw heads are really good, and make sure you're going to be able to get them off again. So if you can't get these off, you can't get this guard off. So a couple of minutes when you've done it once or twice, when the screws are good, make sure it's cleaned off. Okay, so that's cleaned off. You're going to want to leave this off as well, of course, until you've painted the underside of the deck, sharpened the blade, cleaned everything out, all the dirt and anything that's around the actual drive at the back and the belt. Then put this back on, and then put the blade back on. So what I want to do next is take off this petrol tank here. This is really simple to do. For anyone who's not seen the channel before, these are the best type of motors to start on. Really simple setup. You've got your petrol tank, you've got a carburettor here with a diaphragm and gasket in the middle, which is the cause of 95% of running problems on these. If you can learn how to service this carburettor here by changing the carburettor, diaphragm and gasket, you can repair 95% of these and make yourself a massive profit over winter. So I'm just going to take this apart. I'll show you how to do it while the camera's turned on, and it's really simple. I've said, first thing, make sure this is disconnected, spark plug, and take this with a flat-headed screwdriver, take this actual air filter box off. One thing to note with the air filter box is the flat bit goes at the front. I used to get this the wrong way around and have this bit pointing to the front, which I thought looked great until somebody told me it was incorrect. So, no air filter in there. That's not very good, is it? Thumbs down for that if you want, I don't mind. So, I must get one of those. I must swap that out for somebody for a mower. It's a bit naughty of me, that. I'm going to take this off here. There's a 10mm bolt there and a 10mm bolt there. So I'm going to grab this screwdriver here, and you don't need to use any power tools for this, but just to speed it up, I've got some, so I'm going to use them. I'm just going to go in here into the side one here with a 10mm here. You know, when I started doing this, basically it's a lot easier if you remove the petrol cap, by the way, if you're just using a spanner. But I'll take that one off there. There's one on the front here as well. And I've got a magnetic parts tray I'm going to drop these in. I'm just going to move the camera a little bit nearer so I can show you how to unhook this petrol tank in this car. But this is the actual beauty of these engines, is you can just tilt this and take the whole thing off. There's no complex parts to this, it's really simple. So all you need to do with these is pull it straight towards you, and there's one linkage you have to undo, which is here at the back. You see how it's just going to drop down there, and you unhook this little linkage here at the bottom of there, and this whole thing comes off. I mean, that's fantastic, isn't it? So that's all off and out of the way. Now I'm free to tip this mower on its side. I've got no oil in it, and I've got no fuel on this mower either. I've got no petrol tank on it at all. So don't lose these two parts, and I'll show you how to put them back on later on. But for now, I can tip this lawnmower up on its side. Don't ever tip these mowers right over. There's absolutely no need. At this point, just for my own benefit, I'm going to remove the spark plug. I'm not saying it's going to start, there's absolutely no reason it should, but while I'm going to tip it on, I'm going to have my hands underneath here. I'm just going to take this plug out, make sure it's not going to burn me first, because I have had this engine running. NGK plugs, these are B2 LM plugs, the only plugs I use. Never had a bad one in 12 years, so I'm certainly not changing now. And once you've got to this point, you can get your mower and you can tip this, and that's kind of as far as you're ever going to need to go. And I can do everything I need to do here from the underside, such as clean all this off with a wire brush, get in with a paintbrush and paint this up. So as you can see, this has been painted up in the past. I've used Hammerite paint with this. That's tipped this off a little bit far, as you've probably noticed. I normally use Hammerite paint with this. You get some Hammerite black paint, there's a smooth finish Hammerite, and whatever the other finish, hammered finish I think it is. And I normally use this on the bottom of here. As I say, 20 years later, it's still not got any holes in it. And if you're going to get a hole in the deck, it's always going to be starting off in these parts here, so make sure you get plenty on. You can see here I've taken most of this off with the pressure washer. But I've been to B&Q this morning for some Hammerite paint, and for some paint in a tin like smaller than this, it was £13, so I didn't buy any. So I'm going to use something else. So I'm going to wire brush the underside of this off just to clean any extra bits off. I'm just going to go around with whatever paint I've got in one of these tubs here and just put a layer of paint on here just to seal it and keep this deck from rotting on the underside. It'll take me no more than 5 minutes. Make sure you get right into these edges here. I mean, the new lawnmower today in B&Q with a self-drive on and a Briggs engine was £450. I mean, who's going to pay that really? Probably going to... Oh, snap me a wire brush, look. You're probably going to buy a battery one at this point, aren't you, to be honest with you? Because they're getting better by the year. Although it hurts me to say that. The future really is going to be battery mowers, isn't it? I don't even really know if I would buy a petrol one once this one's gone. And the battery ones I've used, the Mountfield ones, weren't too bad. They last a fair while. But the problem is with lawnmowers, I start talking about them and it's I start thinking of all these things. Let me just wind this up here. Sorry about that. It's not an earthquake. I want to say something. I just remembered this. I've been meaning to sort of get this off my chest for a while. So the thing is with the battery mowers, with any cheap mower, is the weight. There's no weight to them, so kind of when you think if it's lighter it's better, it's easier to push. But if these mowers are too light, they just sort of float along the top of the grass, which sounds ridiculous, but you don't get that real nice finished cut with the battery mowers at the minute, because the decks on the cheaper ones anyway are very light. So the opposite of that I've had recently is I got a McCulloch lawnmower with a Briggs engine, the same as this. I've always wanted one of those. I've had a few different ones and I thought these are really nice. The decks feel really nice and solid. But the problem with that, I found after using it a couple of times on my grass, was that was too heavy. So if there's any sort of dampness in the grass, it's even a little bit wet or anything, with the extra weight of it starts to dig in, and that won't good. This is why these SP 470s over the last 10 years for me are the perfect lawnmower. Perfect height, adjustments on them. You can adjust the front, you can adjust the rear, they're not too heavy, they've got the old Briggs engines on, dead easy to service, run on normal fuel, and you can list all these as benefits when you decide to repair these for profit. When I write a listing, I'll write Briggs & Stratton engine, height adjustable on front and rear, complete with grass box, self-drive, blade sharpened and balanced, oil change, spark plug, tidied underneath and painted, all cables checked, serviced. People, it reassures them, they come and pick it up and they know it's been done. And make sure you do everything that you've said you've done, and you can. I could probably still sell that next year at least £120. People in the comment section have argued with me about this, and I always say the same thing: you only need one good buyer. So I don't want to get on a rant about it, but the battery mowers, I would probably get one in the future, but if I was going to get one, I'd be getting a real good one that's got some weight behind it, so it can really do the job. And always avoid the lawnmowers if there's no height adjustments on the wheels, or if you've got to go in from the inside and get your spanners out and adjust the height on the wheels. Don't buy one of those either. But for me, I'm determined to keep this one running. I paid about £200 for this around, what, 20 years ago? Been absolutely perfect ever since. So I'm going to get some paint the underside of this deck, and I'm going to hopefully use this all next season as well. Look what I've just found. Hey, Hammerite. It's red, I think, but who cares? I'm only painting the underside of it. I didn't even know I had this. This is probably about 10 years old, so let's open it up and let's make sure it's not gone rock hard in the tin. Not sure really, I've got the lid on quite correctly, so let's take a look. Well, this should be fun, shouldn't it? This is like, feels a bit like one of them Blue Peter time capsule things, the stuck underground in the 70s that you dig up. Imagine what you get out of one of those from all BBC presenters. Wouldn't fancy opening one of those nowadays, would you? Anyway, let me find something to prise this tin open with that's not my nice new Stanley screwdrivers, and we'll take a look inside. Right, I found one. I didn't want to use, I've got some new, these are the newest ones I've got. Stanley screwdrivers that are really nice. I don't want to open this tin with that, so I've got an old one here. And this will be great if this is not gone rock out. This will be brilliant. These are about £20 a tin now. Ridiculous, isn't it? Everything's so expensive. It's just a joke, isn't it, really? I mean, it really is. Oh, please be alright. This is so good. What's this look like here? Let me just find this. That's broken, isn't it? Oh, look. Hammerite red. Perfect. That's made my day, it really has. You see, sometimes things have a silver lining, don't they? You know, one minute you snap your wire brush, the next minute you've got something to stir your paint with. I mean, you know, you just got to keep going long enough for things to come round, haven't you? So, there we go. Whee! Right, so you've probably seen in previous videos I'm absolutely useless at painting stuff, but you know what? It really doesn't matter at all. I'm just going to get some on here. Let's just go in. As long as you get some coverage on it, cover it over, it really doesn't matter as long as it's got something on. So it's not going to be award winning. This isn't a repair shop. You know, I'm not bringing this back to the year 2000 when I bought it. I'm just covering it over so it doesn't rot underneath. See if I can get a few more years out of it. You'd never be able to buy a deck if you went looking for one, so I'm just going to cover this over. I guess you don't need to see all of this, but I don't know. It's kind of nice to be out here. I've got a cat now, by the way, called Jersey. And sometimes she comes in the garage and has a sleep. I never dreamt I'd have a cat. It's I've never had a pet as a kid, but we've got this cat, and she's great, to be honest. She loves it when I'm doing DIY. I was fixing a towel rail the other day in the kitchen, and she came and she knocked all my tools off, which was really helpful. She knocked them all on the floor while I was doing it. So yeah, I'm going to go around here. You say it might look a bit of a mess. I don't care. As long as it covers all this over and it don't start to rot on the underside, I'm happy. Here she is, look. What are you doing up there? Jersey, are you going to come and help me paint this lawnmower deck with this Hammerite? Look, she goes everywhere. She climbs all over roofs and everything. She sits on my knee on a night. She particularly likes sitting on my knee when I'm watching either snooker or Michael Palin, which is really weird. Anything else, she's not that interested. Especially not the crown. She definitely doesn't like the crown. Are you coming in then, Jersey? Right, so as I said, this isn't going to win any awards, but it's good enough. It's all I need to do. And the reason for painting it is not so it looks grey or anything like that. What happens with these is when people don't look after them in the winter, is that they leave them with grass on, and when the grass ends up all the way along here, it's the grass that actually rots the deck. So if you paint it, even if I want to do it next year and I left some grass under here, at least it's had another layer of paint on. You know, the last real good one I've had almost from new, so at least if you paint this, the grass gets stuck to it, at least there's a layer in between the actual deck. A lot of this is plastic round here and round here, but as long as you get in these parts and round the back of here and here, you're doing all you need to do really. So that's all I wanted to do with that. While I'm in here as well, I've done a lot of this. There's a few bits in here, but you could blow this out with the air compressor. I won't do it now, I've painted it, but I have taken a lot of this off with the pressure washer, so there's no massive amounts of grass around all this drive and this transmission at the back. I can see these pins on here are still nice and tidy as well. What you're looking for on here is you're making sure that these haven't broken off. If these are broken off, this can get twisted and the blade can sit itself on a strange angle and you can get all sorts of vibrations and kickback. So if you're looking for this part, these are called blade adapters, sometimes they're called blade bosses, and what you'll find is the different ones for different mowers, which sounds stupid, and what I mean by that is that even for this model of mower, because it's got a self-drive on, it's got this band around the back where the self-drive fits. If you have one without the belt on, you're going to need a different blade boss. And I haven't bought any parts for a while that haven't really been off eBay, but I used to use a company called Garden Hire Spares. If you quote the badge that's on the side of the mower, tell them what model it is, they should be able to help you out. So these are blade adapters. The most of the time I find them on eBay called blade adapters. So if you're going to do this, go up to the underside of it and everything, you might as well have a look at these pins and make sure that they're still in good condition. I'll grab the blade while I'm here and show you what I'm talking about, because the blade here, you can see here has holes in it and it sits on like this. You can see how they sit through there to hold it on. And the idea is that these break off and the blade gets out of sync before actually bends any of the crankshaft. And in here you've also got like a key, a crankshaft key at the bottom. There's a crankshaft one at the top and there's a keyway at the bottom as well. These are designed to break and twist off instead of damaging the crankshaft. That's the whole idea of them. So if you've got a lawnmower that won't run but you've got fuel going to the plug, you know you've got spark and you know you've got good compression, if it won't run, there's a good chance one of the keyways, not normally the bottom one, normally the top one, is slightly out of line, and what happens is you get spark at the incorrect time. So while everything seems to be working alright, if it sparks at the incorrect time, you will not get the engine running. It just won't fire at the correct time, you won't get the spark at the correct time, and it just knocks everything out that little bit, so the engine won't actually run. I'm going to put this on properly because this will be about £300 in about 3 years time. Excellent. So next up I'm going to refit this cover. Of course you need to do this before you put the blade on. Many times before I fitted the blade and remembered I've forgotten the belt guard. So what I normally do with these screws is here, make sure the heads are really good and clean. Give them a little brush with a wire brush as well. If you've got a bit of grease, I recommend putting a little bit of grease on here before you put these back in. So obviously you can see the belt's fine, it's all in the correct position. I've got my sump plug back in here. You can see where that fits actually from here, can't you? So let's just pull this up here. So you can see the sump plug here, can't you? That's the one I fitted earlier. As I said, again, on Blue Peter. I'm going to fit this back on here now. I've cleaned and tidied all this off. Make sure, as I've said, you've got these really nice and clean on the edge. Make sure you're going to be able to get these off again. I should probably wait till this paint's dried on here, but I'm going to put it back on anyway. I'm going to slide that over there like that. I'm going to put this bolt on first from the other side. Put my hand on the other side. This is a bit fiddly with the carb on. It's a lot easier with the carb off because I can get to the screw on the other side here and hold it. So for now I'm just going to do that hand tight, and the reason I'm doing it hand tight is it gives me a bit of movement at this side to get these on as well. So I'll put this one on. I've put a little bit of grease on this, just line these holes up here. As I say, when these came from new, these mowers, they only come with really small screws that are probably about 6 or 7 mil. As long as it goes in far enough to tighten up and you can get it out again, it really doesn't matter. You're not going to damage anything. Even if you leave the screw, as long as it's tight, leave it sticking out a little bit, as long as nothing's catching on the blade, you're going to be able to get this off. I don't do that, but I've often thought it would be easy to get the pliers on it in the future if you're really struggling with things like this. So I'm going to put that one on there and put this one on the other side. We've got it all painted off underneath, belt guard cleaned out, It's just nice that, you know, when next season comes around, all you've got to do is put a bit of oil in this mower, and you can be up and running for the next season, knowing that the underside of it's going to be done. The thing to kind of avoid doing as well, it sounds quite obvious, is cutting your grass when it's wet, but everybody says that, but the reality of it is that you're always going to cut it when it's a bit damp sometimes. If you want to get it done on a morning and it's, you know, not completely dry, there's always going to be occasions where you just want to get it done, and whatever you do, you're always going to get grass that sticks under the deck, which you really don't want. So if you are going to do that, which everybody does, make sure you clean it off at the end of the year, because these decks will wear out far quicker than these engines will. I bet this engine will probably last around 50 years. So next I'm going to tighten this 10mm bolt off. There's actually a nut at the top of the opposite side of the deck where you can't see around the other side. I'm going to hold that. Just hold it with a ring spanner, and it's a lot easier with this petrol tank off. You can get to that screw really easy. That's it, that's nice and tight. I'm going to leave that where it is. I'm happy with that. So there we go, we've got the belt guard back on. Blade adapter's alright, all painted up. The next thing I'm going to do is sharpen this blade up, so I've not got to go back underneath it. Once I've sharpened the blade up, got the blade back on, I can put this lawnmower back down. I don't need to go back under the underside of it. While I'm doing the video, it's a horrible raining Saturday afternoon, so I'll show you a few things. I'll take the recoil cover off this, we'll take a look at some parts of the engine, and I'll show you around a few little things while I'm here. So, to be honest with you, I'm just stuck in here and it's pouring down, and I'm just enjoying filming a video. There he is, look, my ex-cameraman is hiding, look, letting the cat in. Right, so I'm going to sharpen this blade up. This isn't something I normally show, but I'm going to show you how I do it. I don't care if anyone tells me that I'm doing it wrong, so I've done it for years. I've done thousands of mowers, and I've tried them all after I've done them. They all cut really well. So the first thing I do is I just clean anything off the blade that's massively stuck to it. You're going to want this balanced when you've sharpened it as well, and the larger the blade size you get, the more important this becomes, because if you don't get these blades balanced, what you find is you get vibrations back through the handles, which is horrible when you're actually cutting your grass. So I've got a blade balancing tool somewhere, I'll find it afterwards, and you drop it on it, it tells you if it's leaning one way or the other, and you can just even this out. So with these blades here, you can see there's a natural angle on one side of the blade here, and all you've got to really do is follow the natural angle that's on this blade. You've got to do that side there, and you've got to do the other side here. So all I do is I put some safety glasses on. I've got an old bench grinder here, and I just follow the natural angle along, and just give it a sharp edge. This is what anyone would do with an angle grinder, but you've got a bit more control doing it like this. So what you need to do, of course, and I must say this, is you put some safety glasses on. Most people won't bother, but I do. Don't want any sparks, I don't want anything hitting me in the face. Don't do it with gloves on. Just be very careful what you're doing. Make sure you've not got any kids that are about to come in the door. Mine are a bit older now, so they're a little bit wiser. And the next thing I do, and there's a reason for this, is now I've got this sharp, as you can see, this actually faces upwards on the deck, and I've had customers come to me and say these blades haven't been sharpened because they can't see anything, because this sits at the bottom. So what I generally do is I turn this over and I'll just put a little line along the other side, so if somebody wants to look when they've come to pick this up, they can see it's been sharpened, because they expect to be able to see it. So don't take too much off. I'll make sure this is balanced. You can see how quickly we've got this sharpened. And from the underside, if someone comes to pick this up, there's just a little line on here, and this is crucially important. I've mentioned this on a lot of videos. If you're going to need a new blade, then just go and get one, because if you don't get the correct angle on here and this blade isn't sharp, it's kind of more important than you think, because this, as it's spinning so fast, it doesn't just cut the grass, it provides the back lift to lift the cut grass clippings up and push them into the back of the grass box. So if you've got any wet grass or anything like that, this is not going to be perfect without a sharp blade. So getting the angle correct and making sure these are sharp at least once a year really is worthwhile. I want to try and find my balancing tool now and show you how to make sure these are balanced up. I just realised I've not drunk my tea. I've also just realised I forgot to film myself balancing the blade, but I've balanced it. You can find a balancing tool. It looks like a cone on eBay or wherever. So I'm going to put this blade back on here and tighten this up using my impact tool. Once I can find my blade, where have I put it now? Oh, what am I like? Where, let's have a look. Right, here we go. There's the blade. As I said, these parts want to point upwards. You can get these on upside down, by the way. So if you wonder if it's cutting really poorly, just be aware that it is capable of getting these on upside down, so just be very careful. I'm going to get that there. This is going to point up. Put that through there like that. What I normally do is I normally get this hand tight, so it just doesn't kind of fall off these pins either side. Like that. I'm going to get my impact. Probably use an impact socket for this really. And I'm just going to tighten this back up using the impact tool. Again like this, making sure of course your fingers are nowhere in the way. And I'm happy with that. That's the underside of this done. Everything's cleaned out, deck painted, blade sharpened, back on, all the grass cleared out of everything it needs to be. And that's nice and tidy for another year. But you can see there's a little bit of work involved there, just to take all these parts off to get to that sump plug, because as you can see here, it's actually hidden by this belt guard. So normally, as I've said before, that's why I normally use the extractor. So while I've got a few minutes left on the battery on my camera, I'll just take this cover off and we'll have a look under here and make sure there's no dirt under here that wants taken out, and make sure everything's clean and tidy for the start of next year. I'm not going to do the diaphragm and gasket, I've done it on loads and loads of videos, but I am going to take this recoil cover off and we'll just have a look and blow any grass out that's in here. Very carefully take these 10mm bolts out of here. I've seen ones before that people have used impacts on and they've actually rounded the engine block off, and you can't get these back in very well. It's kind of alright taking them off quickly like this, but putting them back on, I'll just use either a normal spanner or a socket. So 3 bolts to come off there. This one with this on here, I'm not sure what it's called, goes around the edge like a lip on this. That's the exhaust one. So if you've got 3 and one of them is slightly different, the exhaust is the biggest one because it holds the exhaust on at the same time. There's a Kevin spacer under here, look, take him off, move that out of the way, and then we can see in here everything looks really kind of clean and tidy because I keep this clean and tidy. You can probably tell I've done this last year. So all I'm going to do is go around here. I'm going to blow this off with the air compressor. Make sure all these cooling fins are clean, by the way, and just give this a good blowout. You might find that your lawnmower's got like a guard up the side of here. Some of them do down the side of here, and what happens is, I think it's to stop the heat coming out, I'm not sure what it is, but it's got a guard, and all that happens is it piles up with grass under here. It turns into this kind of moss after years. Make sure all this runs freely. I'll show you the kill switch at the back as well, just to make sure you understand how that works, and we'll put this back together. But there's not much work to do in here. You can see just how easy it is to strip this down. In fact, while I'm here, I'll show you the keyway at the top, because I had a comment the other day on one of the shorts saying, what are you doing here, you're just showing off the tool. Well, no, I'm not showing off the tool. What I'm showing off is this nut. If you try and take it off, everything normally turns, the blade turns underneath, and the only way to get it off without an impact tool is to wedge a piece of wood under the blade, kind of put your knee against it and try and turn this top bolt. And it can take ages. Sometimes you just can't do it, but with the right tool you can just zip this off like this. So as you can see straight away, probably even missed this has already come off. I can lift this off and I can have a look in here and I can have a look to see if the keyway is exactly where it should be. So I'll take the camera off the tripod and I'll show you what I mean. If you're getting fuel to the plug, you've got compression, you're getting spark, but it still won't start. You need to look, excuse me, at this little keyway here. You can see this keyway, how it all lines up nice and straight here. It lines up, there's a cutout in the top of this crankshaft. This has to be exactly straight. If it's knocked to one side at all, it throws the whole timing of this flywheel out. These magnets, therefore, don't pass through the ignition coil, don't spin past it at the correct time, so you get a spark at the incorrect time when the piston's going up and down. So if you've got a lawnmower and you really can't understand why it's not starting, everything seems to be alright, it's either that or it could be this. So I'm going to show you something else as well. I'll just find the right tool. Look, follow me to my toolbox. Look. I'll show you this as well. This is the kill switch, and a lot of people think these are faulty on these Briggs engines. Oh, the kill switch don't work, or the coil don't work. Well, I'll tell you about the coil. I've had one bad coil in thousands and thousands of these little Briggs Classic. So if you think it's the coil, I'd be very, very surprised if your lawnmower won't start. What you want to find here is the kill switch at the back here. There's actually this little switch, so when you pull this handle up here, it moves away. You need to make sure there's a disconnection between this little tab here on the top and this that should move away. If this doesn't operate properly and this doesn't swing out of the way, it doesn't disconnect, then you won't get a spark. Very difficult to film from this side, but I don't know if you can see under there, there's just a tiny little tab that sticks down and it connects to this part. So that part has to swing out of the way and have a disconnection to get a spark. The next thing I see happen is that there's a problem with the wire. It's not normally a problem with it being connected here. This just pushes down. You can see here this is nice and clean. What generally happens when people have had these taken apart is the wire that runs around here, it runs all the way under this ignition coil into here. The wire actually gets caught because people get the recoil cover here and the edges of this are quite sharp, and they push it down and they make a break in the wire. So a few things to note if your lawnmower won't start is make sure the kill switch wire is connected, make sure you've got a disconnection. If you've got another wire to try it, then do that, and as a last resort I would replace the coil. The other thing is, in fact, I wouldn't even replace the coil on many unless I'm absolutely desperate. I probably wouldn't. The other thing I've seen is that in the end of here, this rubber part, there's actually like a metal part in here, and this is what clicks. This spark plug pushes in the end of here, and it must click in and form a good connection. Again, it's really quite difficult to film in there. You can just about see this metal part, and the end of the spark plug, wherever it's gone here, this must click into it. If it clicks into it and you get a good connection, you'll be up and running. So a few things to look out for: the keyway, the kill switch wire, and this as well. Another thing I want to mention as well for anyone who's struggling is sometimes you don't have a gap in the spark plug as well. Here at this end there should be a gap. What people do is they tend to tighten them so far in that it bends that little tang, so it's actually banging against the inside of the engine, and of course if there's no gap you get no spark. So I'm going to cover this little oil hole over here. I'm just going to blow this around the compressor, and I'm going to manually just tighten this recoil cover back on. So I'm going to put all this back together now I've blown this off, including the carb, and show you how to do that as well. And just great little mowers to work on. I mean, they really are. The other thing, I'll mention this as well, if you're trying to get this flywheel off, hitting it underneath or whatever you do, don't hit the top of the crankshaft because you'll break the threads here. If you break the threads, you'll never get this back on. You might as well take your lawnmower straight to your local tip because it's an absolute nightmare. Not done it myself, but I've seen it done. So be very careful. When I'm putting this top nut on here, I'm going to put this on hand tight. I'm going to make sure it's threaded properly right down to the bottom. Then I'm going to back it off a little bit once I know it's threaded correctly. Then and only then am I going to tighten it up. And that's nice and tight. So got that back on there. I'm going to put this recoil cover back on here like this, and as I said at the beginning, I'm going to do this by hand. I'm going to make sure that I don't catch the wire around the far side as well when I put this back on here. This is always a little bit fiddly to get on this one for some reason. you want to make sure that this as well, this part here, there's actually a little section here like a cutout that should always sit through the front of there. Make sure that's on nice and tidy like that. And then I'm going to get the 3 bolts that I had before, and I'm going to tighten these up by hand. As I said before, there's a spacer under here, so I'm going to put that back under there. This goes behind the recoil cover like that, and I'm just going to start these and make sure they're threaded properly by hand. I said these are really easy to strip, not just the threads but the actual engine block. You want to really take some time on your mower, making sure that these are actually going as you want them to go, and you can feel them. If you do them by hand, you can actually feel if it's going right or not. This is the exhaust one. I'm going to put this around the other side. Make sure it's threaded properly by hand. And then the front one, make sure this isn't caught, make sure this is completely free through the centre. I'll put this one in as well. And I'm actually going to use a socket to tighten this up as well, rather than using an impact tool, just to make sure I don't over tighten anything and strip anything. Super important. You can strip one of these down in just a couple of minutes really, once you've done it a few times. As I've said, if you can learn to change the diaphragm and gasket, which again is a 2-minute job, you can get these running like new, clean them up, sell them, and at least double your money, especially through May, June period next year. Just list them all at once, take the best listing, the best photographs possible, list every possible benefit you can, and get them sold. Make yourself some extra income. Just going to refit this cover across the kill switch. I'll come back to that, as I've lost the screw for that, which is really poor. But do you remember at the beginning I said to you, don't lose these here, because these fit in the back of this carburettor here. Make sure this is clean as well. In fact, I'll just give that a little bit of a clean off. You can probably tell with this mower, a lot of this is already really nice and clean and tidy. As I do this kind of once a year, if I'm out in the garden, I'll just give things a tidy up. I'll just give that a little bit of a clean down the back of there. The rest of it's nice and clean and tidy. But these parts here, this rubber goes in here, and this goes in first, like this, and you've got to push this to the back. Make sure it's sat nice and flat around the back of there. And then the white one, this is a retaining one. It's a bit hard, it's like a hard plastic. Push that in there, and it just stops the other one coming out. So all you've got to do with this is you've got to get this hole here, make sure this V here swings left and right, so it's like a happy face, look, hello, like that. And there's a big hole and a little hole. You want to use the big hole and take this here, this part here. I'm going to film this, just give us a second. Take this part here, leave all these springs connected, and take this part here, the bottom of this part here. You see this? And you just hook it through that big hole. That's all I'm going to do. Sometimes on camera it's not that obvious, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to get that part there, and I'm going to hook it, push it through that hole there, and just tilt it, make sure everything moves around like it should. And then where the black and white little O-rings were, the retaining clip, you're going to push this onto this inlet manifold, making sure you do it as squarely as possible. Push that on like that, and that forms a really nice seal. I'm then going to get the 2 bolts in at the beginning, this front one here, excuse my bald head, I'm going to put that in there. A lot of people forget to put that in, but it actually levels the tank. Not sure what difference it makes, but obviously if it came out it should go back. This is the other side of Kevin's spacer that we put back before. It all goes through there. Again, I'm going to get my impact for this one, and I'm just going to push this all back together. It should only take a second. We'll get that, we'll get that. It's really handy having a few tools, but it's one business where you really just need some old tools to get started. It's so simple. So it's a lot easier if you take that off. Take this up here, that's tight, and do the same at the front. And that's it. We've got both those back on. Put this petrol thing back on. I'm going to leave some petrol in there. I have a theory that if it's empty, it's more likely to rust at the bottom. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Leave me a comment. But that's all back together. I'm going to leave myself a note now on top of here where the oil is, and on the pull handle as well, that I need to put some oil in before I go back to doing this. The other thing I always forget is this as well. If you notice that, I always forget this as well the first time I do it normally. This actually fits on here. One goes on there. It's a little bit fiddly to do. The other one kind of squidges onto here like that. Takes a little bit of fiddling about, but you get there eventually. Just like a rubber that goes on there. The next thing I need to make sure I do is get myself an air filter. Before you put the air filter box back on, make sure everything bounces around like this. As you can see, these springs get tampered with a lot. If your lawnmower's revving up and down, it's not the springs, it's the diaphragm and gasket that sits in here. Must make sure I get myself an air filter for this. And as I said at the very beginning, this goes on with the flat bit facing towards the front here. And we'll just give that a tighten up. And really, that's all I'm really going to do in this video. But for next season, I've got a Briggs & Stratton petrol lawnmower that's 20 years old with no rot, as far as I can tell, underneath. It's all painted up, nice sharp blade. I don't have to go to the underside of there anymore. I can put some fresh oil in it. In fact, I could put some fresh oil in it now, but I probably won't. I'll leave it. Makes no sense to do that. I'll be ready to go. Hopefully when I come to this in the spring, get this out, it's all nice and clean and tidy, I can just start using this, which is a great feeling. I've really quite enjoyed filming the video really, and just doing a bit of tidying up in here, just painting the underside of this deck. Not much that you've not seen before, but there's always new people looking for things to watch, and I was out here doing this anyway, and it's just nice to get in touch with the subscribers out there and say hello, let you know I'm doing fine. I hope you are as well. Leave me a comment, let me know how you're doing. Let me know if you've changed over from a petrol mower to a battery mower, or what your future plans are. If you've got a mower like this and it breaks, what are you going to buy next? You're going to get a gardener? You're going to get AstroTurf? Fake grass, whatever they call it? Are you going to get a battery mower? Are you going to buy an electric mower? Where are we in 2022? Are you even going to see a petrol lawnmower in B&Q in 3-4 years time? Personally, I doubt it very much for home use, but we'll see. It's been great to film the video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Thanks for watching, and who knows, if I'm out here again, I might film the odd video. If not, you can find me over at Stampy's Random Reviews and Tutorials. I'll leave a card at the end of this video now. Thanks for watching. See you next time, maybe.